So in this session, we're going to discuss two different solutions from Orchid Systems. The first being Report Runner for both Crystal reports as well as FR financial statements, and the Orchid Process Scheduler, which has 3 levels of functionality to automate administrative tasks within Sage 300. One of the things we often get asked by Sage 300 customers is there an easier way for me to be able to go in and generate Crystal reports or FR financial statements that I'm running on a regular basis without having to manually go in and select the parameters for how I want those reports run every time? And absolutely, the answer would be Report Runner. If you think about it, computers are very good at doing the same thing over and over again. And so it doesn't make sense for a Sage 300 user to go into, let's say, the accounts receivable module and look at transaction reports and say, well, why don't I run my age trial balance? And they run the age trial balance and they have to go in and select all these different sort, selection, and formatting options. And every time they run the trial balance, they're making the same selections over and over again every time they run the report. And I've had some people who run the trial balance weekly, so they're doing it 4 or 5 times a month, and other customers that are doing it almost on a daily basis. So they might be running the age trial balance 15 to 20 times in the same month and having to enter the same parameters to run these reports. Or they have to run the report twice because one group of users wants information in one kind of format with certain data, and another group of users wants the same report with different data or different formatting. So it just doesn't make sense to have people doing their reporting that way when there's a tool like Report Runner that will make the process so much easier, so much more streamlined, and take advantage of the benefits of using a computer for what it was designed to do, handling repetitive tasks in a very efficient way. So we want to take a few minutes to review what Report Runner might be able to do for you. Let's start off, though, by identifying the fact that when we look at the security groups within Sage 300, these are part of the administrative services. Report Runner is part of a suite of applications called Information Manager. If you were part of the presentations earlier today in this track, you saw a presentation on document management, link, and notes. Those are 2 elements of the Information Manager suite within Orchid's portfolio of products. Report Runner is another example of an Information Manager tool that helps Sage 300 customers manage information and reporting. And what you can do is you can define email messages that communicate to the interested parties when reports have been generated, and they can either be created and set up in a folder, their own personal folder on the network, in a PDF format, or maybe an RPT Crystal report format, or an Excel format if it's financial statement information from FR. But you can also email and attach the reports to that email. And so we use a concept of reporting groups so that as you're generating these reports, you can also define which reports a user needs to get and in what format they get the information. So using Report Runner and a combination of Process Scheduler with Report Runner, you can schedule and automate the process of generating the reports and delivering or distributing those reports to the appropriate user in the appropriate format at the right time. And so you can set up different security groups that will define who belongs to that group and what reports are part of that group. So that's where we start off, is by defining what reports people need and how they're going to get delivered to them. As we look further into the configuration of Report Runner, what we need to do is specify a directory on the network where you're going to save those reports. And this is where you would create the folders for individuals So if you're not going to email them the reports, you can generate the reports and have them posted to their individual personal folders on the network. And then likewise, you would specify the connection to the email server in your organization that allows the system to automatically email these reports as they're being generated. So that's what the configure email details will provide for you. And then in addition to that, you would set up email message templates. So similar to what we showed as part of the EFT processing presentation earlier today, when we're emailing remittance advices to employees and vendors or direct debit notices to customers, we can do the same thing internally for our own people. So we talked about the example of an age trial balance. We can generate these age trial balance automatically within Report Runner and email them to the appropriate people at the appropriate time. You might also send financial reports, or for salespeople, you might do sales commission reports, and you would have a unique sales commission report for each salesperson and be able to generate that automatically and email it to the salesperson. And by using Process Scheduler, we would schedule that to happen on a particular day at a particular time. So using email as a communication device to add information to the reports and send it out automatically can be a huge time saver. And this is what we mean within Process Scheduler by automating those processes. Now, when we look at actually adding Crystal or FR reports, the Crystal reports are either standard Crystal reports or reports that have been customized for you. And so in order to use Report Runner, we create a custom menu of standard Crystal reports or customized Crystal reports. And to do this, we simply add a section, and let's just call it BAASS reports. And then within that section, we would be able to add another report. And we'd browse and select the file for the report that we want to include. So let's say it's this report. And then we want to add that to that report section. And it opens up the ability to describe more detailed what it is. So this is the sales item pick report. So we can rename the report anything we want. We can put it in portrait or landscape. We can add the security group to say this report is for people that are part of security group A within administrative services and save that. And then we can determine what parameters we want to include in the report. And what we're essentially doing is we're hard coding the parameters that you would normally see on the report generation screen within Sage 300, but instead we're going to predefine what those parameters should be for this version of the report that these individuals want to run on a periodic basis. So once we've established all of that, I'll save those changes, and you'll see that under BAASS reports, I now have the sales item pick report right here. But if we go back to our AR age trial balance report, when we right click, not only can we edit the parameters that have been hard coded, so you can see here, we've hard coded aging periods of 0, 30, 60, 90. We've told the system that we want to enter from customer group BF to wholesale. So all of those parameters can be hard coded in advance, and you can change these for different groups of people. And then once that's been completed, we can schedule these reports to run on a particular day at a particular time. So we could choose to, let's say we want to choose this date, we'll just choose January 15th, 2020. And we could say, I want to run this daily, and it's going to always be the 7th day of the month. Or I could say, I want to run this weekly, and it's always going to be the 3rd week in the month. Or I might say that it's every Friday, and it's always going to be the 3rd Friday in the month, or something like that. So you can choose the periodic period that you would like to run the report, and then you choose, do you want it sent out as a PDF, an XLS, or an RTF, the rich text format, or do I want to go and print it? It is possible, if you'd like to choose a printer that you want to send the document to. Now, of course, in our world today, having automation and paperless processes, it might be advisable to create a PDF and email that directly to the person or set it up on the network. But either way, you have options as to when and how that report gets generated. And then, of course, if it was the age trial balance, we have the message in email that we would send for informational purposes to the people getting a copy of the age trial balance. And then we simply add the email addresses of the person or people that are part of that reporting group that get that information. And then notice, as we produce these reports, we can incorporate year, month, and day information, even down to the hour and minute. So we'll know precisely when the report was generated and sent to the individuals as part of the reporting process. And if we want to, we could just go ahead and run the report as a manual process if we needed to do something ad hoc. Otherwise, we would schedule it to run in Process Scheduler. So just as we do that with Crystal reports, we can do that with FR financial statement reports as well. So let's say you have divisional reporting and then a consolidated financial report. Well, in FR, you would be able to add a group or add a report. Just as you saw before, we could create a separate department, Department 300, add additional reports under that department. And essentially what we're doing is we're choosing the criteria again for how we want this financial statement to be run. If we've segmented our GL by division, region, and entity, in this case, we're running divisional statements, we could hard code the segments for the division and say, I want to run a batch of financial statements for segment 100, our commercial division, and another batch of financial statements for segment 200, the retail division. So I hard code those parameters and save them with the report so that I can see the information at a divisional level and also a consolidated level. And again, this will pick up the report from the FR reporting templates and send that information out to the relevant people. So generating report groups, defining the format and layout of the reports, and saving those to a customized menu by person or individual allows us to define what kind of information and when it gets distributed. So the next step then is to automate the process through Process Scheduler, which is the next solution we want to talk about. So as I mentioned with Process Scheduler, it can link to Report Runner and automate the generation and distribution of reports, but it also has a number of other functions as part of its functionality. So again, you can configure email to use email as an alert function when these processes are run, and email templates to send out messages. So for example, depending on the process that you want to run, it might be a database dump that you're going to notify people that the backup has been done, a database dump in Sage 300 has been done, or a data integrity check has been run, or I've run my day end, and if I found errors, I want to send an email. And also we can check disk space. These are all the different types of things that we can do using Process Scheduler. If we're using Report Runner, we can identify that the Crystal reports have been scheduled and run, and it's been run for this particular company, and they now have those reports. So all of these are different ways that we can use email as an alert or notification function. And then what we do is we configure Process Scheduler within one company. We call that the configuration company, where all the schedules are set up. And then we can set it up to run reports or run these processes across any number of Sage 300 company databases that we might have. So for instance, if you use the operational suite of Sage 300, you might want to run day end across multiple companies at the same time. And that's how we create the schedules. So when we create schedules, what we're doing is we're going in and saying, let's say we want to do the day end across these companies, Orc Limited, Orc Inc. 2, 3, and 4. And we use email as the alert function, and we can say every time I run day end, send an email to somebody, or only send an email if there were errors in running day end, or don't bother sending an email. We don't want to. And then we would identify the email address we want it sent to. But notice that we can run these processes across multiple companies as part of the same schedule. And in this case, what we're doing is we're running the IC day end, and then it generates system batches. So we want to automate the posting of those system batches as well. And here we can specify that we're only sending an email on error. And if there is an error, what do I do in the schedule? Do I move on to the next step, or do I stop? And every time the schedule is run, we have a date and a timestamp. We tell you what the status of the process was, if there were any errors, and we log what happened with that scheduled process. And the audit log will tell us if there's any information that needs to be confirmed or reviewed. So if I go back, you can see that logs are being run every time the process for day end has run, which companies, and what was the result. Did we have any issues? And here, an email was sent because we must have found an error in the process. So we will see here that an email was sent because there was an error message that we couldn't perform a certain function because there wasn't security authorization in place to run the day end or post the batch. So an email was sent to identify that error condition. So these are the things that you can do with Process Scheduler by automating administrative processes like that. Now, we also talked about Report Runner. So here, what we would be running is financial reports. So if we set up the financial report groups within Sage 300, then we could set up the system to say, in this company, for that department, which was one of the departments we set up Report Runner to run, it would send out an email with that subject line, the financial reports for Department 100, send it to that email address, and specify the path to where those reports are being stored. Otherwise, we could send the email with the email message and identify when it was run and that it was successfully processed. So we know that that individual received the reports on this day at this time, and they have the information that they need. And these are just some of the variables that we can include as part of the email message or part of the file name so that we specifically date and time the generation of the report. So that would be for financial statement reports. And then of course we have a process for running crystal reports. And same thing here, we're identifying the status and that it was successfully run, and identifying which report group for which company that these crystal reports were run for. So all of these can be scheduled processes within the system, and that would happen for each company that we want to generate these reports. So in a multi-company environment, this is a huge time saver because the system is going in after hours. You set it up as a task within Windows Task Scheduler, and it can log into Sage 300 on its own, run the process, log out of one company, log into the next company, and run another process. And then send you emails if errors are found, or just identify the fact that the process has been completed. So when we schedule these processes in Sage 300, I'll just list very quickly for you all of the different functions that are possible. And as I mentioned, there are 3 levels to Process Scheduler. The first level in level 1, we can check modules integrity or check integrity by individual module. We can dump the database. We can refresh our information or Info Explorer cubes. We can run crystal reports that are configured in Report Runner, and we can run schedules within a schedule. So you might have a run reports schedule, and then you'll incorporate the run report schedule as part of a month-end process scheduler. So imagine automating your month-end process where you post all the batches, run the reports, and then close month-end automatically as a scheduled process. That'd be a pretty slick way of running your month-end. So up to send email, or sorry, run extender script is all part of level 1. When you move to level 2, that incorporates the day end, either in IC or PO, posting all the system batches, or you can say only post the ready to post batches, or post all the batches within AR, AP, and GL. And we also have specific batches for inventory control and project and job costs. That's all level 2. When we get to level 3, we can also load databases, copy databases, we can run programs, any executable program with a wait or don't wait state. You can run macros, you can run GL consolidation, export and import processes if you use the GL consolidations module, or you run the financial report group of FR financial statements within Report Runner. You can also open fiscal periods, open fiscal years, and automatically close the earliest open period and open the next closed period. This is particularly important now that you have control over the fiscal calendar. Sometimes people forget to close old fiscal periods or forget to open new fiscal periods, and people start entering transactions, trying to post the batches, and they can't because the fiscal period is closed. If you use Process Scheduler, it would automatically be opening and closing fiscal periods for you to make sure people are not posting transactions in error to old periods that should have been closed off or into new periods when they're not open yet. So those are all processes that can be scheduled within Process Scheduler, and we find that this is a tremendous time saver, and particularly when we're trying to automate processes that take a lot of time and are generally of the administrative nature. There's really no reason to be doing a lot of these things manually when there's a tool that's readily available for use within Sage 300 to automate these processes and document what actually happened in these processes. So I'll finish up the presentation there, Remington, and ask if there's any questions at this point.
So I do have some questions here. The first one I have is, can you schedule custom Crystal reports in Report Runner or just standard Crystal reports in Sage 300?
That's a good question. And yes, we can do both the standard Crystal reports as well as custom Crystal reports. So you see here on the visual process flow, we've identified both Sage 300 and custom Crystal reports. So any report that you create in Crystal could be incorporated within a Report Runner report menu.
What happens if the schedule and process schedule does not run? How will I know?
Okay, very good. So within Process Scheduler, when we were setting up those schedules, I mentioned very quickly, so you might have missed that in the presentation today, we can say, do we want to send an email every time? Or we could say only if errors. And that will identify a column where we can specify if there's errors, yes. And then we can also specify on the detail page what error message are we going to send, and is there an email message that we've created to identify that. So that's how we would notify someone that there was an error in the process. And then you can also determine what happens within the schedule. Do I keep processing every step in the schedule, or should I stop because it's a critical error and I need someone to look at it before I complete the process? So there's a number of ways that we can control when and how the schedules are run if errors are found. And certainly the email is the way that we use to alert people. So what we do in some cases is, like BAASS, for instance, they might have a customer run data integrity and send an error to their consultant at BAASS if an error of data integrity is found. And then BAASS can be proactive in calling the client and saying, hey, I notice you've got some data integrity errors in Sage 300. We need to look at that, so be careful about doing any more processing today. Or they can say to the client, you know what, it's not critical. You can continue processing. Don't worry about it. So it's a very proactive way to maintain control over your Sage 300 system.
The last question I have here is, if I want to schedule an FR report using Process Scheduler, level 3, do I need to purchase all 3 levels separately, or are levels 1 and 2 included in the price of level 3?
Okay, that's a good question. So the way we've priced Process Scheduler is that you buy level 1, and then if you buy level 2, that includes level 1. And if you buy level 3, that includes level 2 and level 1. So you don't have to keep buying process scheduler 1, 2, and 3, and it's a cumulative cost. If you buy level 3, you get level 2 and level 1 included. So thank you for asking that question.
And it does look like that's all the questions that we have for this session. So thank you, Robert, again for presenting.
Thank you.